The October wind carried a sharp edge that afternoon, sweeping dry leaves across the sidewalks of Maplewood, a quiet suburban town just outside Boston. The sun dipped lower, painting the streets in fading gold. For most people, it was just another weekday winding down, but for Daniel Harris, every hour was measured against one important ritual: meeting his son Noah at the bus stop. At 36, Daniel had built his life around work, fatherhood, and survival. The early mornings on the construction site left his hands calloused and his back aching, but he didn't complain. Every ache reminded him why he pushed so hard: his 9-year-old boy who still needed him more than anything. Daniel had been both mom and dad since his wife, Claire, had passed away from an unexpected illness 4 years ago. Some days, the grief hit like a fresh wound, but most of the time, it was a dull ache that had become part of him. As Daniel rounded the corner toward Maple Street, he expected the familiar sight: children chattering in clusters, backpacks swinging, parents idling in cars. But what he saw instead stopped him in his tracks. A little girl sat alone on the bus stop bench, shoulders hunched, tiny hands clutching the edge of her backpack. Her blonde hair was messy, strands sticking to her tear-streaked cheeks. She wasn't just sniffling. She was sobbing in that silent, shaking way that spoke of real fear. Daniel slowed his pace, his protective instincts kicking in. He knew how vulnerable children were, especially when alone. Still, he approached carefully, crouching a few feet away so as not to frighten her. "Hey there," he said gently, his voice calm, almost fatherly. "Are you okay? Did you miss your bus?" The girl startled at first, looking up at him with wide, watery eyes the color of storm clouds. She rubbed her sleeve across her face. I don't know," she whispered. "Everyone left. I was supposed to get on the blue bus, but it drove away." Daniel's heart tugged. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emily," she murmured, hugging her backpack tighter. "I'm Daniel," he said, offering a kind smile. "My son Noah gets off here too. He should be here in a minute. Maybe we can figure this out together, okay?" Emily hesitated but gave the smallest nod. Daniel noticed how her sneakers were scuffed, her jeans too short at the ankles. She looked cared for, but just barely, like life had worn on her too early. Moments later, the familiar roar of the school bus filled the street. Noah hopped off, spotting his dad instantly. "Hey, Dad," he called, racing over. Then he stopped, noticing the girl. "Who's she?" "This is Emily," Daniel explained. "She missed her bus." Noah's brown eyes softened, and he flashed her a friendly grin. "It's okay. My dad always helps." "Right, Dad," Daniel chuckled. "I try." Turning back to Emily, he asked, "Do you know your address?" Emily fumbled with her backpack zipper. After a few tries, she pulled out a pink folder. Inside, written in neat block letters on a school emergency contact sheet, was her home address. Daniel's stomach eased. She lived only a few blocks away. "Good job keeping this in your bag," he said. "That helps a lot. How about we walk you home?" The three of them set off down the tree-lined streets. At first, Emily kept her eyes on the sidewalk, her small steps hesitant. But Noah, with the natural ease of a boy who hated awkward silence, began telling jokes. He exaggerated stories about how the school cafeteria's spaghetti could be used as glue, and how his math teacher probably hated numbers. Emily giggled quietly, then louder, her earlier tears fading into shy smiles. Daniel watched them, a lump forming in his throat. Seeing his son comfort another child reminded him of Claire. She had always been the kind one, the heart of their family. For a brief moment, he felt her presence beside him, as though she had nudged him to be there that day. But when they reached Emily's house, Daniel's relief gave way to unease. The small, one-story home sat at the end of a cracked driveway. The paint peeled in long strips, shutters hung crooked, and weeds choked the narrow yard. A rusted tricycle lay toppled near the porch, its wheel bent at an odd angle. The curtains were drawn tight, and for a moment, Daniel wondered if anyone was even home. He knocked on the door, firm but polite. Seconds passed before the door creaked open. A woman in her mid-30s stood there, her frame thin, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. She wore a faded sweater and smelled faintly of cleaning supplies. "Emily," she said, her voice sharp with surprise. "Mom," Emily cried, rushing into her arms. The woman bent down, hugging her fiercely. Relief washed over her features, though it quickly gave way to embarrassment. She looked at Daniel, her gaze wary but grateful. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. I work late shifts. Sometimes she gets confused about which bus to take. I try my best, but," she cut herself off, pressing her lips tightly together. Daniel recognized that look, pride mixed with shame. He had seen it in the mirror during his own hardest days, trying to juggle too much, feeling like no matter how hard you tried, you were always falling short. "It's okay," Daniel said softly. "Kids get mixed up sometimes. She's safe, that's what matters." The woman nodded quickly. "Thank you again," she whispered, pulling Emily inside. The door closed with a quiet click. Daniel stood there for a moment, staring at the weathered house. Something about it unsettled him, not in a dangerous way, but in the way of lives stretched too thin, of burdens carried in silence. He thought of the woman's tired eyes, the way Emily clung to her. As he and Noah walked home, Noah chattered on about his day, but Daniel's mind lingered. He couldn't shake the image of Emily sitting alone, crying at the bus stop, or the way her mother looked as though she hadn't rested in years. That night, after Noah was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee gone lukewarm. The house was quiet, but his thoughts weren't. Helping Emily home had been the right thing to do, but something told him their paths had crossed for a reason. He didn't know what that reason was yet, but he felt the weight of it pressing on him, whispering that this was only the beginning. Little did Daniel know, that simple act of kindness, helping a lost little girl at a bus stop, was about to unravel a truth that would reshape his life in ways he could never have imagined. The following morning, Daniel couldn't shake off the memory of Emily's tear-streaked face or the hollow look in her mother's eyes. At the construction site, the sound of hammers and drills faded into the background as his mind replayed that encounter. He had walked plenty of kids home before, neighbors' kids, Noah's friends, but something about this felt different. There was a weight to it, as if he had stumbled into a story that had already been unfolding long before he arrived. That afternoon, as Daniel and Noah waited at the bus stop, Emily appeared again. This time, she wasn't crying. She spotted Noah and ran toward him with the eager excitement of a child who had found a friend. Daniel's heart lifted at the sight of her smile. Not long after, her mother arrived, walking briskly in a navy uniform, her hair pulled back. "Hi," she greeted, her voice cautious but polite. "Hi," Daniel replied. "I'm Daniel. This is my son, Noah." The woman hesitated, then said, "Sarah." She gave a tired smile before turning to her daughter. "Emily, let's go." Over the next few days, Daniel noticed a pattern. Sarah walked Emily to the bus stop in the mornings but sometimes couldn't meet her after school. On those afternoons, Emily would drift toward Noah, and they'd chatter while waiting for Sarah. Slowly, Sarah's guardedness eased, and she began exchanging more than just polite greetings. One evening, as the sky turned purple with dusk, Sarah lingered a moment longer. "You didn't have to walk her home that day," she said softly. "Most people wouldn't have bothered." Daniel shrugged. "I couldn't just leave her there. I know what it's like, being lost." Sarah studied him curiously, but he didn't elaborate. Instead, he glanced at Emily and Noah laughing on the sidewalk, their backpacks bouncing as they hopped from crack to crack in the pavement. "Your wife?" Sarah asked gently, noticing the absence of a ring on his hand. Daniel's jaw tightened, then softened. "She passed away 4 years ago." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, her voice carrying a weight that sounded like more than sympathy. Daniel nodded. "We manage, one day at a time." That night, Sarah let Emily come over for the first time. The Harris home was modest but full of warmth. Family photos framed the walls, a bookshelf stuffed with children's stories stood in the corner, and the faint scent of Noah's favorite chocolate chip cookies lingered in the air. Emily wandered wide-eyed through the living room, stopping at a picture on the mantel. It was of Claire, Daniel's late wife, holding a toddler Noah at the beach. Emily tilted her head. "She looks nice," she said simply. Daniel's throat tightened. "She was." Sarah caught his expression and lowered her gaze, as if she understood too much. Over the next weeks, visits became routine. Emily and Noah were inseparable, building Lego castles, trading jokes, sharing homework frustrations. And Daniel found himself drawn to Sarah. She was resilient, resourceful, and fiercely protective of her daughter. But beneath that strength, he saw fatigue etched deep into her face. One snowy evening in December, Emily insisted on bringing over a box of her drawings to show Noah. They sprawled across the living room floor, papers scattered everywhere, crayon rainbows, stick figure families, clumsy hearts scrawled with, "Mommy plus Emily." Daniel helped them gather the mess. As he stacked the drawings, one paper caught his eye. In the corner, faintly scribbled in handwriting he hadn't seen in years, was a name, Harris. His chest constricted. He turned the page over, his hands trembling. The handwriting wasn't Emily's, it was Claire's. He would know it anywhere. "Where did you get this?" Daniel asked, his voice unsteady. Emily blinked, confused. "It was in the box. Mommy gave it to me." Daniel looked at Sarah, who had gone pale. Her lips parted as though she might deny it, but then tears welled in her eyes. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered. Daniel's pulse pounded. "Find out what?" Sarah lifted her head, her eyes glistening. "Claire, your wife. She was my friend. Years ago, when I found out I was pregnant with Emily, I was terrified. Emily's father had left. I had nothing. I wanted to give up. But Claire, she wouldn't let me. She helped me, sent money when she could, encouraged me to keep going. That drawing, it's hers. She made it for Emily when she was little, when she sent gifts for her birthday." Daniel staggered back, stunned. His late wife had never told him. She had carried this secret kindness quietly, without recognition. "She never mentioned you," he said, his voice breaking. Sarah nodded sadly. "Claire didn't want to burden you. She said you had enough on your plate. But she saved us, Daniel. Without her, Emily wouldn't even be here." Silence filled the room, broken only by the children's laughter as they flipped through more drawings. Daniel stared at them, his vision blurred by tears. His wife was gone, yet her compassion lived on. In Emily, in Sarah, in this moment that now tied their lives together. That night, after Sarah and Emily left, Daniel sat by the fire with Noah asleep upstairs. He pulled out the drawing again, tracing Claire's familiar handwriting. A strange mix of grief and comfort flooded him. She was gone, but she had left a legacy that reached further than he ever knew. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Sarah grew closer. Their conversations deepened, from parenting struggles to dreams they were too afraid to admit. Emily and Noah became inseparable, their laughter filling both homes. Slowly, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years: hope. One evening, as snow blanketed the town, Sarah whispered, "Do you ever feel like she brought us together? Like Claire wanted this?" Daniel swallowed hard, his heart aching but full. "Yeah, I think she did." He took Sarah's hand, and for the first time since losing Claire, Daniel didn't feel like a man simply surviving. He felt like a man stepping into a new chapter, one stitched together by loss, love, and the unbreakable kindness of a woman who still touched their lives, even from beyond. Because sometimes, helping a little girl crying at a bus stop isn't just about walking her home. Sometimes, it's about finding your way home too.